Here we go. Very special Wasteland Spotlight today as we make a return to Eagle Mountain and check out all the strange activities taking place there. I have to say, of all the places that I have been over the years, this one's intrigued me the most, and it still does. For my returning viewers, you knew it was coming and you won't be disappointed. And if you're new to the channel and to the saga of Eagle Mountain and its mysteries, you should first watch the other two videos in this series so that you will understand what's going on. As this is a special third part to the story, I won't be rehashing the old material too much, and it is a complex situation out here. A link to the first video in the series should be at the top of the screen now, so get caught up and then come back. I promise it's going to make the experience so much better. And with that out of the way, let's begin our third foray into the shenanigans taking place out at Eagle Mountain. Welcome to the Wasteland, my friends. Everyone, thank you for joining me in the Wasteland tonight. Before we get started, let me mention that I wanted to give an important update on some of the things that I've learned about the facilities here and the various players involved before I even made this recent trip. But in the interest of getting to the good stuff as quickly as possible, I'm going to save that part for later in the video. If you do want to check on that first and then watch my latest trip in, I do have chapter markers set up so you can jump around if you wish. I know I do tend to make pretty long videos, which isn't everyone's cup of tea. For now, let's get right into it. This time going in, I decided to start my insertion under the cover of darkness rather than just wandering around like an innocent hiker or off-road enthusiast. I didn't think they were going to fall for that this time. I began all the way on the other side of the valley. There's trails everywhere out here, and I brought with me yet another rental jeep to abuse in the search for truth. Using the mountain elevation here, I figured I could maybe get some valuable intel out of any radio transmissions coming out of Eagle Mountain. That first night in, I encountered what may be the dumbest rabbit on the mountain as he refused to take cover and kept running back and forth in front of the Jeep instead. And here I thought rabbits liked cover in darkness. He did lead me up close to one of the pumping stations along the Colorado River aqueduct that brings water all the way to California. I figured we could hop out for a quick look since this rabbit went through all the trouble to lead me here. There are hundreds of miles of these aqueducts running through the desert to pull water from not just the Colorado River, but from many underground basins and wells across the area. California is a thirsty state. An incredible feat of engineering, but I am not really sure how good of an idea it is to have the water supply for the state exposed and accessible like this. Anyway, once I reached a good spot to camp out for the night, I ended up staying up almost all night just listening to various radio transmissions from the area. I had recorded some GMRS channels that were in use in the area before, some of them by the nearby solar plants, and occasionally by regular folks out driving the desert trails. But last time I came here, there really wasn't much of note for that. This time was different. I did get a lot of irrelevant chatter from the mine personnel working on Eagle Mountain doing who knows what, but nothing worth wasting video time on. There were three transmissions that I picked up that were interesting because they seemed to be in Arabic. I cut up the footage to drop them here. Not the best audio, but I did run it through translation software, the results of which I will put up on screen at the end after you listen to what I picked up. accurate these translations are, but it's the best my limited skills can come up with. There was some variation using different translators, but not much, and they found no threatening language or anything like that. It's because it's Arabic, guys, doesn't mean it's all bad. There is the mention of flight as well as training, and given my location and the range limitations of GMRS plus the line of sight limits, the transmission could have only come from this little valley. Because of that, I've attributed the transmissions to the flying lion compound. There was also the time between 0100 and 0300 approximately. That converts to the middle of the afternoon in Tehran. Maybe they're physically here working on local time for the Middle East, or maybe they're just night owls. Here follows my current theory of the facility being used to train pretty much whoever's willing to pay for the training and then log into the platform and use it. From what I've gathered through my research, that could be anyone from Ukrainian or US military personnel training Kurdish rebels in Iran to any of the various flavors of terrorist groups out there that may want to train their people for dirty deeds that are done, well, done quite expensively, actually. That's something we'll talk about later. Also, not hard to spot. It passed nearby where I'd holed up under a small stone outcropping. I'm pretty sure they spotted the Jeep, but I don't know if they tagged me or not. Stop and hover, so who knows? Yes, I'm well aware that I need some better night vision camera gear. When I was still several kilometers away from the installation, so not really a threat. Someone may have seen the lights, which I had expected might happen. In with my cheap, crappy camera gear actually made it look worse in a way, but definitely kind of interesting. Multicolors, I can see flashing green, red, blue. I don't know what this thing's doing. Keep on around here doing Jeep things, or so I was hoping it would appear. Never the case, the mission continued. Across the valley and through the desert at a point far south of the I went across the valley and through the desert at a point far south of the facility itself, and then proceeded up into the mountains on some of the old mining roads and trails. The plan was to get close during the night and then lay low until morning. That way, I would already be in position before daybreak, and that would also allow me to sit close by the facility all night to see if anyone had noticed my approach. Once I had gotten pretty close, I went out on foot to survey the area and find some place I could stash the Jeep where it wouldn't be seen from the prison or the mine in the light of day. That meant I had to get it below the visual horizon, which is not an easy thing to judge at night. There was no hiding from the air out here, so if they launched drones in the morning, I was cooked. There were a couple times in the night that I was close enough to actually hear the drones launch, but I stayed away from the line of sight to the facility. Once, I could observe one at high altitude before it completely killed its lights, which is illegal, by the way. I had to assume that they had thermal imaging, and I did not want to draw any attention. Luckily, the desert is quite warm even at night, and there are multiple small caves and old railroad cars and more up here to find them on, all left from the old mining days. I did do a little scouting about near the old mine railroad at night, but there wasn't much of interest. Once dawn broke, that's when the real work started. Figured if someone had observed my approach, then they could have sent someone by now. Without that, I was in the clear as best as I could figure. Time to make my way closer and get a look. From a distance, everything looked as before, but there was definitely much more noise coming from the mine areas, and I could hear a lot of trucks. Place that was not permitted to have any mining operations going, there was a hell of a lot of activity. I got my tripod set up to do a few zoomed in sweeps along the perimeter. First thing to notice is the new and massive truck park off along the north section of the town. Many of those famous big red trucks of the Ecology Transportation Company can be seen. For the most part, there were no outward signs of a real security presence, and other than the truck park area, I didn't really notice any changes from the last time I was here. The main difference is the sheer amount of activity, which I was not expecting. There goes one of the trucks now. You can see a vehicle parked next to the trucks over there, most likely for workers, as well as a few RV trailers that are probably in use as field offices or additional living quarters for people visiting the site. Looking in even closer, we can see that there is some sort of security surveillance system active there with visible flashing lights. The slow pan along my southern side of the town showed that the activity all seemed to be along the northern edge of the town where the main road was. The ghost town over here looked like, well, it looked like a ghost town. Eventually, I started panning my way over to the prison. Seemed pretty quiet from here. So took a look on the far side of the town, this time to the northeast, the opposite and far side from the prison. It seemed as if they have refurbished some of the housing over there, probably making a little neighborhood for people doing who knows what for mine. You can see cars parked, more trailers, and even some decorative landscape. Whatever ecology was up to here, they were invested for the long haul. Last area of note is the far southeastern area, a bit distanced and isolated from the ghost town as a whole. This is where we can see the old school that is still in use by the Riverside County School District to service a couple of dozen or so kids from the nearby off grid community and also the small company town that surrounds the massive water pumping station to the south. Here we can see the morning bus arriving. Such activity is entirely separate from the town and the mine, which is part of a different property, but the activity does provide some cover. After seeing what could be seen from here, it was time to risk a little exposure and send in my own air unit. This is when I filmed the actual opening shot for this video, and we'll go ahead and continue that flight and head over to the mine and whatever operations are taking place over there. Coming in over the main buildings for the mine, we can see that Ecology has been very busy and they have built newer commercial buildings to manage whatever they're up to out here. Now, quick backstory is that the old Kaiser iron mine has been closed and, in fact, is actually under a mandatory order for reclamation, meaning it's supposed to be cleared out and demolished to remove as much structure and pollution as possible and return the land to nature. Obviously, that's not what is happening here. I haven't been able to find any mining data or permit information allowing mining operations to be carried out again, so that shouldn't be what they're doing. Now, I've done the research, and so I already know what they're allegedly doing, and that is straight up dumping hazardous biological waste here, which is being trucked in from all over California. Basically, it's the biosolids that are produced by city wastewater treatment, the condensed and assorted poops and peeps, if you will. Ecology, through its many front companies, has obtained many lucrative contracts to dispose of thousands of tons of such waste, and this is apparently where they're doing it. Now, as we cruise over this operation, if anyone thinks this is what the mining of iron ore looks like, please explain how that can be so down in the comments, because I would love to see it. For the rest of us, well, this isn't what iron ore mining looks like. I do see a little bit of infrastructure used for rare earths and gold or silver mine processing, but not much. And besides, that's not what's mined here. Nor do they have any filings allowing them to do such work here. Further evidence that will be seen is that the material being processed below is being trucked in from elsewhere, not from this site, which is another thing that mining operations of this size don't really do. We can also see the distinct lack of heavy mining machinery. There are a few bits and pieces down there, but more like generic construction machinery rather than the highly specialized mining vehicles one would see at an iron mine of this size. We can head back to the open pits where the actual ore would be coming from so you can see the activity there. In the meantime, we cruise over some of the industrial areas for what used to be one of the largest iron mines in the western United States. The Kaiser Company was big in the steel industry for a while. There's still quite a bit of it left standing, but obviously not in use. Soon, just over the hill here, you'll be able to see the open pit mine itself and the actual activity of mining taking place. Except what you can see is that there isn't any real activity there. And that's because they aren't mining any iron ore at all. I'll go into detail about what I've learned about the various Ecology branded shell companies that own this place in my wrap up at the end of this video. For now, suffice it to say that they are up to no good and we will move on. Ecology and their business isn't our primary concern here anyway. Let's take a look at that new refurbished neighborhood being built on our way back across the area. And here we can see the isolated school property off to the side, completely independent of the rest of the town's abandoned remains. And we can look at the newly refurbished areas, which are also somewhat isolated from the bulk of the ghost town. Interesting. Coming back out over the bulk of the abandoned town, we can see that it still very much resembles the post apocalyptic ruins we remembered from before. No real changes to the central areas. I wouldn't be surprised to see the next season of Fallout being filmed out here. We're going to take a quick run up along that road by the new truck park just to see what we can see on our way out to the prison. We can definitely see the cars and trucks of ecology workers as well as some of the semi trailers parked and waiting. An important thing to notice is the separation between this area and the area near the prison. Notice that none of the houses here look like they are being repurposed or put to use in any way. And if it was ecology doing whatever is happening at the prison, this is probably where they would set up. Once we turn and move towards the old prison, however, we do see something new. Looks like someone has taken up residence in one or two of the old houses with a pretty decent level of work having been done in the 5 months since I was here last. This is definitely curious since no one was there before, as was made obvious from my walk through this part of the town in the second video that I made of this place. We'll come back to this, but for now we move to the prison, which was protected by radar and other sensors last time. If we're spotted, I want to have as much good footage as possible before having to evac. We can see our old lineman's truck is still present, and I will note that last time when I checked up close in the first video, there was no license plate, no DOT markings, and no VINs. Very sus. Coming in now for a slow orbit of the prison facility, we can clearly see the large Nokia drone system hangars are still present. Harder to make out are the two small DJI docks nearby, but they're still there. From up here, there doesn't seem to be much out of place, but we can see what appears to be a third DJI dock that has been added. And also, we see that the Starlink has been moved to a new position. Finally, we can see another flashing light from what is undoubtedly some sort of intrusion countermeasures or surveillance on the pole by one of the prison entrances. Head in closer. This is a great time for me to reiterate just how important drones can be for reconnaissance and threat assessment for almost any sort of mission. As preppers, and especially collapse preppers, we need to stay very much aware of what is going on out in our own backyard, as well as the wider world that surrounds it. This means regular scouting and patrolling to see what's out there and, more importantly, who might be out there. Drones can be incredibly useful for this, from simple tasks like scouting trails to see if your vehicle will be able to drive on them, to spotting potential imperial entanglements before they spot you. These tools have only relatively recently become available at a reasonable price for people, and it is definitely a technology that needs to be considered from multiple angles. That also includes learning about them specifically to understand how others may use them against you. Furthermore, as their use and misuse spreads, there's always the danger of future technology bans by the government. So it's a good idea to think about getting these things before that happens. Anyway, back to our recon. Nothing else really seems different yet, so it's time to get all up in the business here, up close and personal, right? Immediately, we can see the placement of the new drone dock to the right side, and we can also see that these folks are still stretching bare cables across the ground haphazardly in a way that no OSHA rep or corporate safety officer would ever approve of. Yet another indicator of this site's illegitimacy. We can see that the Starlink system has been moved, as has the weather monitor and thermal camera motion sensor system. And also, the fancy matrix space radar looks much less fancy now. Popping up for a moment, I do notice that there is a lot of activity around the old prison administration building now. Looks to be well refurbished, and we can see cars and people do car and people stuff over there. No real indication of whether that is ecology stuff or flying lion stuff, but it could be either. Definitely have to avoid being seen. But I do still need to take a quick look, as this is very close to where I'll actually be coming down on foot to look around, and we don't need any surprises. Multiple vehicles parked around the area, and I do see some people down there working on something, so it's rapidly becoming apparent that I actually have an opposing force on site this time to worry about. Last time, I did not. Let's go get low inside by the hardware for the very best look of all while I still have the battery power to do so. I want to invade the personal space of that radar and really try and tick someone off while getting a good look. Very quickly, we can see the changes from before. Radar tower looks to have been taken down mostly, or at least have most of its systems and sensors removed. Maybe they were ashamed of their failure to detect and stop my drone last time. Maybe such a system that emitted high powered radar signals was something that could give away the presence of their activities here, and so they got rid of it. Either way, it definitely isn't active now. And our weather and thermal system has definitely been moved here from the old wooden watchtower. They are probably relying on passive detection now since the radar is gone. One thing is for sure from my observations so far, this so called fly town isn't crawling with all the law enforcement personnel doing training like they pretend it is. But more on that later. On the way out, we're going to take a look at that newly occupied house as well as our old friend the lineman's truck. No real difference on the truck, just facing the opposite way now, so definitely in use. We can also get a look at the security and intrusion countermeasures apparatus that's been put up on the pole here by the side entrance to the prison. The house over here is a strange one, and I can't imagine actually living in one of these rat's nest homes even after cleaning it out. The walls, the wood, the ceilings, all infested with who knows what. Nope, you can count me out. But I have the sneaking suspicion that this may be where our Arabic friends are staying. They have to be here somewhere. GMRS doesn't have that much range. My working theory at this point is that they now have a few personnel on site to manage things, and they've probably moved most of the sensitive computer systems and servers over here into this house for security. Being situated where it is on the far southern edge of town, it's unlikely that this house is associated in any way with the Ecology Company people who are all located on the other side of town. The choice of location over here suggests the desire to stay out of sight and out of mind. Anyway, battery low, time for recon on foot. Previous night, I had stashed the Jeep in this ditch up on the hillside below the line of sight from the town below. This isn't actually a road up here. This is the bed of the old railroad that used to come along the mountain here to service the mine. I don't think those buzzards are too optimistic for my chances here. Good thing this isn't the Wild West anymore and I can disappoint them. We'll be making our way along the old rail bed and service roads along this hillside here, and we'll take little glances down at the site here and there as we go. Sorts of old railroad relics up here, and any other time my curiosity would have me stopping to check it all out. But today my curiosity has other cats to kill, so I just catch some glimpses of cool things as I pass by. I'm going to go further up the rail bed a ways and then get to the edge where I can have a view down into the prison. Viewers of my previous videos, which should be everyone at this point, will notice that this time I'm coming through a different back door than before. Some sort of old tool container here. Closer now, we can see the prison in the distance a bit better. There's the Jeep that is parked at the side of that newly renovated house close to the prison. If I was a gambling man, that is where I would bet our Arabic fellows are staying. No visible activity now, but if they're operating at night on Middle Eastern time, then they would be asleep right now. Prison seems deserted from here, but plenty of activity behind it along the road and by the admin center. Let's move on. More relics of the railroad past here. In the distance is where I posted up the first night across the valley. There is the old water tank I used as my navigation aid on the first trip here. And here is a bunch of railroad history that has been turned into kindling for the good of, well, for no good at all, really. We will see what we can see from here now that we're a little bit closer. Some trucks coming and going on the ecology side of the place for sure. Got a car under that carport. Definitely a lot of action here compared to 5 months ago when there wasn't a soul in sight. Here comes yet another of our red ecology trucks. They seem to have trucks coming and going about one every 8 to 10 minutes, which is a hell of a lot given that there's no mining to be seen. Looks like they're arriving full and leaving empty, which is not the way mines traditionally work. Close enough now to get a look at where I had entered the site in my first video. The outside fence of this place had always had various holes all over the place, but I'm sure a lot of them have been found and fixed since my visit. This one has definitely been sealed up. Other than the fence repair, I don't really see any signs of other changes, surveillance devices, or intrusion countermeasures, but that doesn't mean they aren't there. Looks like it was sealed for rebar that was torn up long ago. A little JV weld can't fix. Down here, we're completely shielded from view, and also we don't make any noise or dust clouds that could be seen. Also emerge below the line of sight on the other side, which is always a plus. Any sort of infiltration into a potentially hostile area or non permissive environment, even one as simple as this, still needs to be done at a slow and measured pace. It's like a game of leapfrog. As each point along the path of entry is reached, you need to pause and reevaluate the next move after you can see what you're dealing with. You check for any possible countermeasures that could detect you, and you also look at any distant positions where possible observers could be watching you from. Once you evaluate both of those things, you choose another point that you can see that will be safe, and you make your way there to repeat the process. Now we can see how well they sealed up the old entry point here from the first video. Going through there. This was one spot where I had assumed it would be most likely for them to place some sort of surveillance or intrusion countermeasures, but I haven't seen any yet. Let's head around the fence line a bit. Here we can see another of the old cuts in the fence that they haven't even bothered to reinforce. This is how we know we're dealing with a very amateur and reactive security effort here. They reacted to my previous video and entry by sealing that way in, but they didn't really bother to check and see if there were others nearby. And I know from experience that there are dozens of holes in this external fence. Rule of thumb to remember, regardless of which side you are on, offense or defense, you want to be on the proactive side, not the reactive one. Being proactive puts the opposition in the position of having to react predictably to the moves that you're making, and that means you get to control the pace and timing of the engagement. Being on the reactive side, well, who on you? Cruising down the fence, we can hear a lot of banging and activity in the distance, and we'll have to identify what that is before we go further. Meantime, we can get some looks at stuff through the fence to see what's changed. One thing we can see for sure is that the matrix space radar mast has definitely been stripped of all its sensors, and even the entire control box is gone. Like I said, I'm betting that such a system was determined to be more of a weakness than a benefit for a place that's trying to do covert drone training, since it is constantly emitting signals that would be picked up by area military and government ELINT gear. Now, perhaps if this was a legitimate law enforcement training site, that would make sense. But this removal is just another indicator that this place is trying to stay as off the radar as possible, unfully intended. Think of my Hillary Clinton mask. We'll head over to the dorm, which is locked up, or so it would seem. A look through the window shows that the fans are gone, as are the bundles of wires that originally ran inside from the broken window on the left, directly from the Starlink. This window here seems to be open. Looks like the breaker box was forced open, a clear sign of someone who does not have permission to access it. I'm sure they needed to, though, because even supplying external power, you would still want to use the internal wiring. This refrigerator box goes along with my old theory that they may have wanted to originally have people live on site here, but actually changed that to the little house we saw nearby in the town. More stuff shipped in from outside the US. Drone batteries, I'm guessing. Lots of Intel bits in here. Now, for legal reasons, I don't think I can show this paper on the channel. However, I am going to put up shots of two totally unrelated LinkedIn profiles for you to look at instead. Pretty interesting. I wonder who they are. And yet again, another label with info that I can't show, but believe me, I do check it out. Looks like that package was delivered to someone's residential address. Another thing a massive international corporation on the up and up wouldn't be doing. Every little bit of this has gotten me closer and closer to understanding what's going on here. And by the time I break it all down in the after action review at the end of the video, you'll know too. This box here was obviously for a smaller drone. And here's the section of window where they had been running their cables through out to the Starlink before. Starlink used to sit right outside there. I've counted six of these solar camera systems so far. All common and affordable off the shelf stuff. Hardly the kind of tech a massive company would put to use. Heading out of the old lot dorms now, we'll take another look at our drone field. Also get a better view past the camera mask and out to our lineman's truck. And behind that, we can see one of the cars parked for the newly occupied house. That definitely wasn't there before. At this point, I headed off to the side area to get a better look over that way and to check out the camera mast itself. And that's when I heard voices that were much closer than I would like, and that's my cue to unask the AO. Carefully still, but with a sense of urgency. I didn't hear anyone or anything else on the way out, so I was able to get my butthole unpuckered by the time I was back up on the ridge headed for the Jeep. As the alarm fades from my mind, now I want to know who was down there and what they were up to. Since the drone had been charging all this time, I figured air support was in order. I planned to launch it as soon as I was away at a safer distance. Ninja shit right there. Back in the air now, I headed over towards the area that I was trying to get a look at when I heard the voices. I did a slow, boring orbit that didn't reveal anyone at all, so I figured maybe it was just yells coming from where that guy was banging away on stuff by the admin building. I decided to get an additional look at where the server room used to be in this building up front, but I didn't really notice anything new or exciting. However, things were about to get exciting for sure. I went to go take another peek at the radar and the larger drone boxes, mostly just for the extra footage for later. As I was moving away from there, I looked back over the spot where I had actually been standing when the voices themselves caught my attention. Let me freeze the video for a second. This is where I was at, and this was the camera system that I was looking at. That means the drone was actually in the area where the voices had come from. I continued to circle around a bit, collecting some extra footage for later editing in this video and generally making use of the battery. But that's when something pretty crazy happened. Up in the hills behind the prison where I was actually sitting, I heard three distinct shots from a 410 shotgun, perhaps, if I had to guess anyway. The drone itself doesn't record sound, but once it reached me, I knew someone must be taking some shots at the drone, so I had to immediately get out of Dodge. Kind of crazy, but it's not the first time someone has shot at my drone. And this fits with previous reports of the people out here firing shotguns at trespassers in the past, as reported in this news article. Again, getting a few warning shots, or what I hoped were warning shots, isn't really something out of the ordinary for the desert out here, but that was without a doubt where the mission would end. All right, so as this up, I'm going to give a short info dump about what I believe is going on here. And this is based on the cumulative data from all my efforts in the previous trips here, as well as all the research I've been doing into it for the last 5 months. This is just going to be the short version for those who only want to get the gist and aren't necessarily interested in the full details. I will actually make a companion video to this one that has my full analysis of the situation. This is just going to be like a little after action review. All right. Now, once I get the full video done, it will get linked right above here somewhere, and also at the end of this video. Um, all right, so we have two players out here. One is Ecology Mountain Holdings, a relatively newly formed LLC out of Cerritos, California. This is the company that was that bought the property at Eagle Mountain, the entire site of the mine and the ghost town, all of it. Now, ecology itself is a long story, and most of the background has been covered in previous videos. But in short, this is just one of many, many shell companies under the ecology umbrella. Over 3 dozen of them, actually. All of them operated out of the same little office in California. Now, some of the LLCs even own parts of the other LLCs. Okay, making it's a really complex web, all owned and operated by the same handful of people. All right, the biggest companies on the list are Ecology Transportation and Ecology Auto Parts, both of which are famous for their big red semi trucks. Right, the same trucks that we're seeing around here. The the shortest story is that Ecology Mountain Holdings, they bought this place hoping for it to be used as a hazardous waste dump. But that ended up getting shot down by the courts. Then the plan was to build a hydroelectric power plant that was based off of that whole aqueduct project that we saw on the way in. The plan also got shut down. Right, and Ecology has been left with an expensive piece of property with no real use. Okay, mining wasn't happening. Not only was the mine under the old Eagle Mountain mine, it's under an order of reclamation to be returned to nature and all that, but iron mining isn't as profitable as it once was, and the resources needed to do it at scale are beyond a company like Ecology. Okay, hell, just reconstructing the rail lines would cost more than they paid for the whole place. But I have gathered up all the documents and looked at all sorts of stuff, and it turns out that Ecology has won numerous contracts all around California for the disposal of hazardous bio-waste. Actually, thousands of tons of it. Mhm. Biosolids, they call it. It's the stuff that's left after sewage treatment with the water exchange. Okay, for the most part. They probably set up those contracts when plans for the waste dump were still a go, but as I said, those plans were blocked by environmental groups in court. So that left ecology literally with tons of actual shit and no place to put it, at least legally. Here's where I'll throw out my legal qualifiers for the conversation, okay? Allegedly, from what I have observed and the people that I have talked to, ecology is allegedly dumping bio waste solids out at the old Eagle Mountain mine. Allegedly. Okay. Now, from an industry standpoint, it unfortunately makes sense to do so. Okay. And it really isn't uncommon, especially in mining. If you can't legally get a permit to do something, you just go ahead and do it anyway. And then you try and do it quickly enough to make enough money to cover the fines that you'll get if or when you get caught. Okay, plus a healthy amount of shareholder profit stocked on top. It's just business as usual. Hazmat contracts are extremely profitable. Now, if you have a giant hole to dump stuff in, allegedly, right? That's where my research allegedly leads me. Okay, now that's ecology. All right. The second player is who we really care about, right? And that is Flying Lion Incorporated. And they are a big player in the drone technology space, and the apparent creator of what they call the Flytown training complex that we just spent hours mucking about in. Now, I am vastly simplifying the info here that I have for this little review. The full story will be found in the documents that are going to be linked in the description and, of course, my follow up video. But here's the gist, all right? Flying Lion is legit, right? Almost. It's entirely legit. They do quite a bit of DFR training and other stuff, but most of it's on the East Coast. They also happen to conveniently be based in the same little California neighborhood as Ecology is. Small world, right? Anyway, Flying Lion's great. Been around for a long time, doing great stuff with the police and such, but Flytown is new. And On the Flytown side, it says it worked with a bunch of police departments in the area. Okay, Redondo Beach, Chula Vista, Beverly Hills, a few of them. Except when I requested information from the departments that were listed on the Flytown press release, nobody would confirm it, and some of them just ignore me. But there wasn't a single confirmation of Flying Lion involvement in those police departments' drone programs. A couple of those departments even sent me detailed files that showed their entire drone program structure. Right, no Flying Lion in there, and no Flytown either. Again, the full report is linked elsewhere. Basically, Flying Lion is actually a flying liar, at least in this case, about Flytown. Right, but it makes sense that if they were going to do something shady, they would want to work with another company that already had dirty hands from shady activity and a place where they could do it without being disturbed, which is why they leased the ghost town and the prison from Ecology. So
New Serum Leduo, 2 serums in 1 pump. Visible by L'Oreal Paris.
So you've seen what I've uncovered here. You know, radio calls, the previous videos discovery of the Arabic notebook and the weird doveboard training slip and all that. We got the haphazard, unsafe, low budget approach to setting this place up, almost like it's temporary, right? And the fact that we never see any activity out here, I mean, come on, I didn't see a whole lot of training going on. So this is my conclusion. I believe that Flytown is being used as a cover for training Middle Eastern drone pilots remotely. The main company, Flying Lion, may be legit, but this little sliver of it is just too slapped together, too hidden away, and too weird. I'd be surprised if if the entire company actually knows what a small selection of them are doing out here. All right. Now, something of note that I'll go into detail on in the breakdown video is the fact that it has recently come out that the U.S., through the Central Intelligence Agency, is actively doing remote training for Kurdish rebels to combat Iran in the Middle East using drones. All right, this news was made public just a few weeks ago, but do you want to bet that the program was actually in place and active long before me and you heard about it? Right? Certainly 5 months ago isn't a stretch. And the CIA has a long history of using shell companies or even legit companies as cover operations for other activities. All right. One of the most widely known is Air America from the Vietnam War era. Okay, look that up. Um, and that is exactly what I think we have here. Okay, after going over all the info, talking to everyone who will talk to me, and taking into account my own experiences here and with the mysterious warning visit that I got after the first video I made, this has Christians in action written all over it. Okay. Um, like I said, this is very simple here. There's a lot more to come in the full video, but that's the after action summary. All right. A legitimate company with a small branch being used as a cover for CIA activity in training remote drone pilots using Kurdish rebels in Iran, allegedly. Now, this is going to be my final trip out to the so called Flytown complex. All right. It's becoming more dangerous. And if what I believe happens to be true, then I really should bow all the way out right now before they get much too irritated with me. Okay. Now, for the full breakdown, I will be dropping that video soon that goes into all the details about the investigation, as well as some generalities about the increasing threat of such places that are also being used by terrorists to remotely train drone pilots. Right? They're doing it too. And hey, we still don't know. This place could be doing that as well. Well, I don't know that. Um, and my idea is leaning away for it. Anyway, watch the video. Watch for that video soon. And in the meantime, my friends, stay safe and stay ready. It is definitely a wasteland out there.